It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.
We're back. Welcome to another SDG Podcast on this warm and wonderful February 10th day, right at 12:03. I don't have the full forecast, but instead...
After reading?
Yeah. What's the dew point? I don't know what the point is of dew. Chad Jettner. You want to say hi?
Hi, Kyle. How are you? Hi, my name's Chad Jettner.
I'm Peter Lawrence.
You got Peter here, and I'm Kyle Bacher. And today we're going to talk about wisdom, and we're going to talk about how do you detect, identify, and apply wisdom to your life or your project, your job. How do you assimilate that? How do you assimilate it so that you can make the right moves, do the right things, and prevent what Chad refers to as anti-patterns from happening?
Chad doesn't refer to them as anti-patterns. It's kind of a known thing. Anti-patterns are not a Chad invention.
But I learned it from you, Chad.
Well, now, how are you applying that wisdom, Kyle? What are you doing with that?
Well, I had to think about it because as a developer, you work in patterns of development, which cross different tools or whatever. You have ways of doing things, and anti-patterns are ways of doing things that are bad, that will go wrong. So the goal is
Can be
you to know both, to identify both the patterns and the anti-patterns. Yeah. So wisdom has identified, a wise developer has already been through the muck and bumbled and fumbled his way along until he's learned the anti-patterns. So there's a big experience component to wisdom. There's kind of built-in wisdom we call common sense, street wisdom.
Who is that built into? That's what I want to know.
Well, I'm going to say many people. Well, it's called out. I think other people recognize when you don't have it.
That's for sure.
But,
Chad,
what is it?
Scott.
Yes. What does it mean to be wise?
Good God, I have no idea. I know what it is. I've got a lot of experience, and I've got a lot of experience with anti-patterns. And I've learned an awful lot from seeing things done horribly. And I think that's kind of what feeds into, if you want to call it wisdom. If you think I have wisdom, if you think I'm wise, whatever we're calling this, it's because I've seen a lot, career-wise. And some of the most beneficial experiences that I've seen isn't necessarily when things go right, because you don't really notice when things are going right. It's just things seem kind of boring.
Right.
I notice often when things are going wrong, well, that's, folks know. And for me, it's wisdom is having survived just a ton of.
I was going to say, is it like post-traumatic stress, where you've survived a bunch of traumatic stress but only like low-level programmer traumatic stress instead of like real traumatic stress?
Yeah, I don't want to minimize the effects of PTSD, but this does feel like shades of that, where I have survived multiple PTSD-inducing incidents, and now that I'm an old person, I can recognize those. and instinctively get a little twitchy when I see shades of bad experiences rearing their ugly heads again, right? So like, most obviously that happens in software patterns. We talk about patterns a little bit differently than what Kyle is referring to. Like, I think of design patterns as, as a code thing, as an architectural thing, as, like that. And then anti-patterns when we're doing something directly opposed to, best practices. It's hard to identify when things are flowing really, really well, because you don't notice, right? You just have this expectation of competency. And let's use Twitter as an example today, right? Like, nobody cared or noticed when Twitter was always available and always up and just kind of boring, right?
True.
But now, we see what happens when you fire 90% of your engineering staff, or, your HA engineers are gone, and well, shoot, now
you've lost your HA.
Yeah. So this example that we're comparing our experience, like the example that Twitter has given us right now, is a perfect macro encapsulation of what I've gone through for the last 25 years, right? I see a lot of tiny little things like Twitter happen.
Yeah, you've been there when
know
people come in and do some of those things, right? Like, I'm going to put my signature upon this department.
Yeah.
And my signature looks like a whole lot like making changes where no changes are needed.
Yeah. And I think for the longest time, we all thought, maybe we didn't all think this, but we just had an assumption that Elon Musk was, he's a pretty smart, wise person. He's seen a lot. And now on public display is some glaring examples of him maybe not being so wise, maybe not being so infallible like I am now.
Right. Do you think he's wise enough to know that? Do you think he's wise enough to know that he can bumble his way along and not lose like a whole bunch of followers? If he bumbles his way to success, it's not going to hurt him. If he carefully works towards success, like, there's going to be a big cost overhead of more people and better expertise and testing and all that kind of stuff. So maybe he's just like, let's just get it done. And then every day it's a new, well, when I try to follow something, this prompt comes up and I can't. Where did that come from? There's just little buggy things happening frequently that are obviously refactoring stuff that's not gone right, like not having the full picture of what the implication of clicking that follow button means. Like, what happens behind the scenes and what does that tie into? Well, obviously it's something that got messed up, and then it's got to be fixed. And I've seen that happen over and over again since he got the platform, where he's not afraid to break production, which is interesting, because being a SharePoint person, I'm not afraid to break production either. Because sometimes there's just things that it's smarter to do it just right in production. Well, it's maybe not smarter. It's just way, 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 way easier. You're going to save a ton of time, and the risk is low.
Because you don't have a duplicate of production that functions the same, you have to make changes in production. We've seen that pattern, that anti-pattern, I guess I'd call it, many, many times. Like, oh, well, production has deviated so far from development that we can try to test things in development, but the reality is, once it gets to production, then we'll know if it really works. And that no one that I know of thought that that was the perfect architecture plan and design. That was like, well, it's what we got, so it's what we got to do. And
You go to war with the army you have, not the army you want.
right.
Don't go to war. That's my tip for the day.
That's a great example, though, Peter. Right? Like we know that we need reproducible early environments, right?
Right.
That's something that at the point in our careers, we've seen every single example of that not happening, from a minor, I'm just going to flip this flag from, true to false, from internal to external, whatever, right? And we know that, oh my gosh, that seems so innocent, but not trying the simplest of config changes in early environments is almost always going to be a recipe for eventual disaster. You might get lucky for a handful of them.
Of course.
But it's not the handful of them that work that people remember. It's the one time that it doesn't.
Right.
And that's why I'm a very huge believer in checklists, even for simple things, right? Like I might have done production deployments dozens of times, right? And I might have
the exact same one, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I'm always going to have a checklist that I literally, like a physical thing that I actually check off every single time, because nobody remembers.
Checklists save lives.
And I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to roll out a feature that's going to cost me 15% of my user base, or cost me, 30% of my advertising revenue, or whatever. I'm still using Twitter as an example of how you do this wrong.
Right.
Fumbling through it, Kyle. Boy, I don't know that that's working all that well right now.
Yeah. How would you measure those? It'll be interesting to see, I guess, if Twitter survives it and stabilizes, and Elon Musk gets his replacement in there, and they start kind of going back to good practices, good patterns of development. Maybe it'll be okay. Maybe his big shakeup will then have happened. Who knows?
Actual product management at Twitter would be wonderful to have again, right? Hey, maybe we don't just kind of wing it with Twitter Blue, right? Maybe we actually think about the implications of allowing anybody to register any name and call it verified. Maybe you don't want to have folks give out free insulin, like say, hey, insulin's free now, right? Like, who knows? That might actually cause a lawsuit or two. I think that we are super lucky that we're not in a position to make those kind of decisions, Peter.
Right.
Where if we really screw up a decision, it's gonna, potentially, I don't know. We're not
just glad our wise leadership knows never to put me into that position.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another thing that's come along with age and wisdom, is having a dedicated QA team to test your code, to use things the way that no one intended for them to be used, and to find all the problems before they show up in production, right?
Michael Aldrich put a giant negative value in his PT carryover, and it adjusted his cash out amount to like $12 million. And I'm like, well, that's not good. Well, no one's going to put a big negative number in there, but a QA person, oh yeah, they're going to do that. They're going to put letters in there. They're going to just wring their hands and get ready to break your stuff with glee. And you're lucky if they do that. That's a good thing. Yeah.
At least that happened in the test environment and not in production. So
right.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, luckily we did that beforehand. Otherwise, he would.
Yes.
Yeah. But he's a good guy. I'd still work here if he'd have me. So you got the wisdom of knowing to do QA, knowing to do UX, UI, user research, knowing to go with product management, knowing to take an agile approach and do Scrum, knowing to get the level of people you want to get as the leadership of the project, and then knowing to listen to them because they've been there, done that. So they bring in wisdom. It's what if the hiring manager or something doesn't really hasn't really experienced all that stuff yet, hasn't really driven something like that and knows all those things. I guess that's where
so another piece of wisdom, right? Like,
yeah,
I can explain it to this person who hasn't experienced these things, what is likely going to happen based on my experience, that I have experienced these different events happening based on what you're suggesting. Are you sure you want to do that? And hopefully they have the wisdom and the experience to know that listening to someone else who's been there and done that is better than making that mistake yourself. But as a consultant, I will only suggest that twice, and then I will be like, excellent. I will document this. We will, go forward with your plan, and we will cross many fingers, many toes, and hopefully I will be completely wrong, and it will just all go smoothly.
Yeah.
Peter, what is the one piece of wisdom you've been consulting for a very long time? I think we both have. What is the one piece of wisdom that you would give to a brand new baby face consultant, like somebody that's just getting into the role, right? Just getting into doing .NET or whatever. What would you tell them?
I mean, you're there to help. But you're not there to, and you will be gone from there. You will work yourself out of a job. And both of those things tend to influence how you react to things. It's more about your reaction than anything, right? Like, as a new consultant, you want to go in and you want to be like, I'm the smartest person in the room. I got all of this. I can do all of this. Let me show you how. And
Yeah.
Nobody wants to listen to you.
That's a common mistake when you're starting out, is thinking that you're an expert and you're going to go in and they're going to hang on every word. What I tell new people is focus on the reason they brought you in. You're like a plumber. They bring you in to do a specific thing, fix the pipes and all that. But you're not there to fix everything and do everything. So focus on that and keep your head down, do the work. And there's plenty of cultural and politic type things. And there's plenty of people problems and friction and stuff going on anywhere at
Right.
any company. Don't add to it. Like Chad said, just be cool.
Be the HR incident you want to see, the one you want to read about.
So
No, maybe not. Maybe don't do that. But I think, for me, this is I don't want to call it a game because I don't want a potential client to hear this and think, oh, Chad just thinks that he's playing. No, it's not a game, but it is kind of it's a very social role, right? That's what I would tell folks. This is incredibly social, right? We're going to assume commodity coding is something that everybody can do, and maybe it's something that ChatGPT does for us in the future. But it's not. There's not going to be an algorithm for the social aspect of what we do ever. And so, yeah, you're a consultant. Yeah, you're brought in to do for an assignment. But this is also, if you want to be really good, be social, be out there, be available. And the more that you're able to put yourself out there, the more that you can the more availability that you have to give people and the more open you are to receiving, like Peter and I disagree about this all the time. I take all the meetings, right? I'll sit through them. I'll listen. And if I can provide context or add something constructive, I will. And if I do, then, well, there's some more work for us. But that's my approach to it is be social. Go to the happy hour or the lunch or the coffee or whatever.
Right.
And also, like, it really does help if you know your shit, right? Figure out, figure out the patterns, know OAuth, figure out how OAuth works, figure out how to, use Okta as an identity manager, all of that stuff, figure out that commodity stuff.
Right.
And our secret sauce is social and having seen so many of these things over our careers.
Also, I would say find your secret mentors. And it's people that are mentoring you, but they don't know they're mentoring you or that you see them as a mentor. Just get close to those people that have exhibited wisdom and knowledge and have been there and done that in your field, and get to know them and invite them out for lunch, meet them for happy hour, connect. And there's a lot of wisdom in all the different practices, so that, you can get wisdom from those Slack channels. And people do. There's questions that go out there, and there's a race to answer them by people. If you want something answered, the best way to do it is to put the wrong answer out there and tell people you think it's right, and then they will correct you.
That's the way to get the hard ones done.
Yeah.
I've got this quote that I found. Good advice helps you find the solution to your problem. Great advice helps you find you were solving the wrong problem. And that's kind of where wisdom comes in, where you identify, like, oh, yeah, we don't need to solve authentication because this giant team has published OAuth and lots and lots and lots and lots of people are using it, right? So a great solution is don't try to find a solution, use a solution. And, that's taking the wisdom of others and applying it.
Yeah. I heard once someone say that if you're not getting enough requirements, change the game and ask them how they would test it to see if it worked.
Yeah, and how do we know, the definition of done is always another one that's a challenge to come up with sometimes at some places. Just like, well, how will we know when we're done? We won't? Okay, I guess we'll be here forever.
Well, yeah. And I mean, as software developers, one of the things that I've learned is it's super helpful. Write your tests first. Before you write code, write the test for the code. Like, there's little tiny things that you learn throughout your career that, like, oh, hey, writing my test first makes writing the code almost easier, right? Understanding when I don't know, understanding when you don't know, like, hey, I get a requirement. This is a completely new domain. This is a completely new thing to me. I don't know what I don't know, but I know that this is wrong, right? Like, understanding basic stuff like that is good. Understanding how to ask questions is one of the best things that you learn.
Right.
And I think you guys were getting at this a little bit, right? Like with defining done and requirements and everything else. Understanding how to ask questions and who to ask questions of is huge, because you get different answers depending on how you ask a question, right? Like, if I want to get an answer, I will ask a question a certain way in order to get the answer that I know I want. And sometimes that bleeds into me trying to get definition for something that I'm genuinely confused about. One of my tendencies, and I recognize the tendency, is like, I really want it to work this way, so I'm going to ask the question and lead this way, and I'm going to get the answer that validates my thought process that got me here. But that might actually not be the right way, right? Like understanding, like stop, shut up, let somebody talk, let somebody answer your question without your top spin and
don't lead the witness, huh?
There you go. It's a much more concise way of saying what I've been saying for the last 30 seconds. Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, like the approach you take when you walk into a new customer, mine has changed dramatically over the years. And my last external client, it was walk in and seek to understand like the organization, their team, their company, their people. And so I would look for a key person that there's always somebody that has all the knowledge, somebody that's been there, and it's really helpful to find that person and make a relationship with them, so that you have somebody to clarify things and ask questions of. It's not always the person that brought you in that can be that person for you.
Right.
So
sometimes it's absolutely not that person.
Right. And sometimes you don't click with that person very well. So it's a struggle. And it's like, okay, I'm going to try this person that reports to them because they already know that the language of speaking to that person.
I need a Kyle translator.
Right.
And you seem to translate this person very well. And I understand you, so I will use you as my translator, right?
Yeah, and I always tried to find, just to be funny, I called him a human shield. But I always try to form an alliance with a person that could speak tech with me and business with them, right, that they trusted. So it was one of their people that was kind of related to part of the project team, or at least project team adjacent, that's somehow involved, that I can run things through. So, because every organization has their own language and jargon and culture and batch of people. So it's like, okay, I want to go in and get the wisdom of the place I'm working at. I want to gather that up, get all that in my head, and it's asking a ton of questions. It's seeking it out. You got to go after it. They're not going to bring it to you. And that's been really helpful, taking that approach. And I didn't figure that approach out on my own. I figured that out by stumbling, but also listening to other people and what they do. So modeling,
and seeing others do it well, right?
Yeah, modeling my behavior after them and listening to them when they give talks or presentations or just talking to them about stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Chad,
go ahead.
You have an extensive background of development of comic books and flags and whiskey and ducks, or beer, no whiskey. Yeah. How were you starting out? Like, did you kind of just get it and dive right in and grow from there? Or did you, like me, have a kind of a rocky start figuring out kind of a path to success with your customers to get the job done?
I used to be a lot more inquisitive than I am now. That's a skill, and my patience level used to be a lot higher, and there was so much, as far as the technology stacks go, like there was so much I didn't know, right? And so it's starting out just kind of deliberately figuring out the people that I thought were smart, just glancing at their bookshelf, right, and reading the same things they did. I was methodical early on in my career about just learning and kind of closing the gaps with like the unknown, right? And I wasn't necessarily the social side that I literally just talked about half hour ago or 20 minutes ago wasn't there for me at all, right? I was purely focused on technology, development, coding. I started out doing like low-level networking stuff. And I was just, we talked about this previously about, what is it? The imposter syndrome, right? Continuously suffering from imposter syndrome early on and trying to address that by just knowing literally everything I possibly could, right? And I got there by find somebody I respect, look at his bookshelf, ask him a question or two. I never used to be as good about asking questions. I was always a little awkward about it. So getting better about asking questions was huge. And then just burying my nose in books. I mean, I started my career not because this was, a thing I went to school for or anything. It's just I went to Babbage's and picked up one O'Reilly book, and then I picked up the next one, and then I picked up the one after that. And then before I know it, I'm spending, a decent percentage of my income on stacks of O'Reilly books. And here I am. What was the question?
I think you answered
it. Yeah. It was
okay.
How did you get through that kind of early part of your career of not knowing?
How long do you think it took you to go from not knowing to not needing to know everything?
I think it was a decade at least. Where I was, because you get put on something and it's brand new, and you're like early on, I would get much shorter gigs, right? Like not year-long gigs or 2-year-long gigs or 3. Like I'd get some tactical things where like, hey, they need help solving this one problem. You're going to hang out for a week or two, and then you're going to go on to somewhere else.
Yep.
Every single one of those I would go into, and I'd just be terrified. Well, not terrified, but like the first day was always like, okay, you got to project some sort of confidence, but at the same time, you've got to, if you don't know, you don't know, and you got to figure that out right quick. So
you got to learn it, right?
Yeah. So early on, I read reams and reams of IBM Red books. I remember those. Like IBM used to have, they would publish their documentation. They'd call them Red books.
Okay.
And so every product they had, every idea they had, they'd publish this paper called a Red book. And I would just tear through those because at a certain point, they got to be a lot cheaper than buying the O'Reilly books. So instead of buying an O'Reilly book, I would go to Office Depot and spend $50 on printer paper and start printing out four pages per piece of paper, Red books, and I'd go through those.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, early on, my first consulting company, we were an IBM Premier sponsored whatever. Sure. So we'd get a lot of IBM work, and so ask me anything about WebSphere application developer with SOD, rational application developer, WebSphere portal server, WebSphere network dispatch, like that whole stack. I got really, really comfortable with.
Sure.
And then WebSphere became more or less irrelevant, and here I am, out on the cloud somewhere doing all this stuff. So ask me anything about AWS, and I'll probably direct you to Peter because he actually got the certification and I haven't yet.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, I was talking for way too long.
I don't always need to be the expert if I can find an expert that I can put in charge of something. Like, it's delegating to people that I'm not in charge of. But really it's asking. You find the right people that have availability. And so you really don't have to know everything, and fake it till you make it is really just, you suck till you don't. And because you're new at stuff, and you're going to be bad at everything when you start doing it for the first time. So, and I think that's where a lot of imposter syndrome comes in, is you're in that phase of your career. And then there's certain points where things just click. Things just click about what you do, kind of how you go about it, how you start a project, what things to avoid. But you learn your platform along the way as well, outside of the planning and project and consulting and whatever. But the platform knowledge you gain along the way. And then things change. The rug will get pulled out from under you from time to time. It's like, well, without SharePoint Designer, I'm no longer a wizard, because I could do anything with that tool. Yep. I don't write code. So these really cool websites I did and dashboards and all that kind of stuff, well, my ability to do that went away. It morphed into something else.
Into something else, right?
Yeah.
And you had the wisdom to recognize it. I mean, and that's what we're talking about, right? Like what you're describing, Kyle, is the acquisition of wisdom and knowing, where do I start? I've learned where I need to start. Where do I go from the start? I learned where I need to go from there.
Yeah, like if somebody is young and just wondering how the heck people can keep up with all these skills, and how, like, what do you do? And then they spend a few minutes listening to Robert Hansen tell them that he just reads till he knows something exists, files it away, goes to the next thing. So he's aware of all these things. And then when the time comes, he digs in. So he doesn't have to know everything, but he has a awareness of everything.
He's heard of everything.
Yeah. So,
and as new developers, like Peter, this isn't hard, right? Like the development part of our job is probably the easiest part of our job. Anybody can pick up a new language fairly quickly. The language itself isn't hard. The tools around it, there's a lot there, but
I heard somebody describe that the other day, was that, for a senior developer or for somebody that's got more than one language, facing a new language is not a daunting thing at all. It's more like, oh, well, that's just some syntax that I have to learn, and maybe some patterns that I have to learn on how to not use it the wrong way or whatever. But as far as like, oh, today I'm going to be doing something in Node. Okay, well, that's a JavaScript-based language. I can do that. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing something in .NET. Okay, well, that's a C-based language for the C# folks, and I know the syntax for that. I know I need more semicolons than I might if I was doing JavaScript or TypeScript. But in the same thing, it's like I know the constructs of programming, and I know to look for, well, how do I do a for loop? How do I do a while loop? How do I do this or that? And so I have all the constructs, the basic shapes. And, for a new consultant, you should have already had all those constructs at this point. And that's, part of technical interviews, is making sure that they've got some constructs and not just are winging it and, saw it on the internet and drew Tippy and said I'm an artist or whatever.
So Peter, if you had to jump to a Java project, then just get different IntelliSense or whatever.
Yep.
And learn this uses the slash that goes the other way. just those things. But the basics of what you're doing haven't changed.
Right.
And like, is Java does it have like way more things you can do, new things? Like, there's probably there's probably differences between like .NET and or
There
C#.
100% are differences between the two.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, there's just a chatbot that'll convert my C# into Java and then it'll all work perfectly. That's never
Nice.
gone well. But
Not yet.
I can read through Java code and understand it, and I can know what operation and what objects I'm looking for and go out and find them.
Yeah. Because
I did a .NET project a decade ago. Like, as a Java guy, they're like, yeah, there's this. I can't really say the client, but there was this problem they want solved. They're a .NET shop.
Yep.
Take a look. If you can do it, great. If not,
Right.
also fine. But it doesn't take very long. For me, it's literally just like, oh, I'm a Java guy. I'm used to Jenkins and I'm used to my CI/CD tools and I'm used to my IDE and I know all the shortcuts.
Little different tooling, but
yeah. But it's still verse, chorus, done, right?
right.
The beats are pretty much the same.
Yep.
You're just, it's the blues instead of country.
Right.
So
still music.
I'm referring to .NET as the blues in this context.
Well, that's the cool one. So that's all right. Man.
A lot of wisdom in the blues.
Yeah.
A lot of wisdom in the blues. And the kids don't like country these days. So that encapsulates Java pretty well.
So how would you say, because early on when I was starting out in consulting, I wanted to be a big deal. Like, I wanted to be the expert.
Right.
And I wanted to be the guy that rolls into town, cleans up the town, and then rolls away, like the gunslinger that you bring in, like a mercenary, but for IT, but for SharePoint. Like, get him in here, he's going to save us, and then he moves on to the next thing. And I, that puffed me up a little bit in the ego department. I've got a healthy ego, and it's really good when you get taken down a couple pegs, like something that you think you're all on top of goes south, and now you've made a huge mistake, and it's cost time and money and effort. Those are good things. You'll level out as you go through your career and working with tech and doing different things, working with different customers, different organizations. All those bugs are going to get shaken out, and then if you stick with it and you care about doing a good job, you're going to end up being the person that walks in with more questions than answers.
Right.
And you're going to be the person that comes in humble and doesn't pretend to know things they don't know. And doesn't like talk tech and wordy like to people in the business. Doesn't blow them away with jargon and too much information. Like, there's all these different, like, what do you call it? There's all these different parts of our job that require some finesse.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that finesse you learn over time. And that keeps things running smooth. But I did get dinged one time on a form. They sent out a survey to a customer where they gave me a 3 out of 5 on dresses appropriately. And I just wear Dockers and a button-down shirt, and that was a good lesson. Like, maybe I need to iron.
I would ask them, how does your button-down shirt affect the quality of the SharePoint implementation that you've produced.
I mean, why is that question on the survey?
Yeah.
But
that's an odd question. It's an odd question that exists.
As a company, we've gained a lot of experience.
There's wisdom there, right?
Yes, we have accumulated much wisdom as an organization, and the people have accumulated much wisdom. And sometimes you forget that, and your decisions are made, things happen, and you're not really in the room seeing everything. You're seeing this much through a window, you're peeking in, a few things. And then you play armchair Monday morning quarterback, whatever that's called. It's like, well, no, they've been doing this a long time. I hope there's some wisdom in that room. Maybe there is. I'm sure there is.
The company didn't get there just overnight by accident, right?
Yeah, we seem to be doing okay. Mm-hmm. We tricked Chad into working here.
That right.
Seems to be going well. Peter's been here forever.
I was fooled a long time ago.
So, yeah, and it's like listening to wisdom when you think that like you're really sure that there's a different, better way, and you're really gung-ho about it, but someone that is wise is saying, well, I'd be careful because I've been there and I've done that, and didn't work out so well.
Well, and gunslingers right off into the sunset, but they don't hang around to. They don't leave a whole lot of documentation behind or help with the day-to-day problems, right?
The documentation thing, if you're, if somebody comes in after me to fix something, you want to get a person that will not look at my documentation if I wrote any. They're going to look at the bones. They're going to open her up and look at it and understand what they're looking at and be able to figure it out based on what it is. They don't need me to guide them in a certain direction. If there's a problem with your computer and you hand it to me, you don't need to tell me what's wrong with it. You can tell me what is happening, but I don't need to know why. You don't have to tell me why.
Cal, I think the RAM has gone bad, and can you just fix that for me, even though it's a display problem that probably has nothing to do with that?
Yes. All my stuff is broken. I like that one.
That's my favorite.
Broken.
Everything.
Nothing works. So I've made mistakes.
You're the only one in this podcast that's made mistakes, Kyle.
Yeah.
And sometimes somebody warned me, and there was some wisdom there and I didn't listen to it.
Yeah. Ignoring wisdom
cost me
at your peril.
Yeah, it cost me. Sometimes I've had customers that I walked into, well into my career, and they listened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And things went very well. I led made the plan and told everybody what we would need from them and
followed the plan.
Yeah. And I even took on some extra tasks and unloaded some stuff off of one of their developers so he could focus on cutting code instead of updating InfoPath forms, which is really exciting for somebody that writes code. But that went really well. And I've had customers tell me that when they hire consultants, they expect them to come in with a plan, which is not always the case. But, that's where you learn to kind of be flexible, and you just go in and see what the situation is and then do what you got to do.
Yeah. If you walk in with a plan, the plan is going to be either so generic that it's not really a plan. It's more of a framework.
It's a template. We're going to fill in the plan.
We're going to fill in the
this
plan. Right. And then it'll be a real plan. Or it's a solution looking for a problem rather than coming in and saying like, well, don't you want to hear what our problem is? No. I have a plan. I know what the solution. I've heard your 3-word description of it and I know what to do.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't talk to anybody else and you may not have been the subject matter expert, I've got a plan. Like I would not be comfortable to know that someone expects me to have, well, and maybe they're saying a plan rather than a solution. But if somebody came to me with a solution for something from the outside, I would really question their wisdom. Yeah.
It depends on what it is.
Is this where I'm supposed to talk? I'm sorry.
So do you have any, Chad, do you have any mentees, people coming to you, asking you lots of questions, picking your brain?
I have a few now. Yeah. And it's situational, different folks at different levels in their career, and the advice is different depending on who they are. So there's not like, I don't have one boilerplate spiel I give folks. It's, listen first, figure out what they're going through, and hopefully equate it, if you can, to someone, something that's happened to you in the past. But
yeah, tie it to reality.
Tie it to a real life situation that you've handled. That's always the best. If not, how would I have done this or that, whatever the thing is. Or if it's just like, I'm having a rough time and I don't want advice. I just want you to listen. Like, yeah, I've got a buddy that I provide that service for, right? Like basically just want to go grab a beer. Here's what I'm going through. I don't need you to tell me how you would handle it. I don't want to hear anything. I just want somebody to hear it.
Right.
Yeah.
That
listen and not alone.
Yeah. So I don't really have that, but I might actually find somebody that does that I can do that with, because it's cathartic just to like say all of your experiences out loud.
Yep.
And get them out there, and then just be like, all right, back at it tomorrow.
Well, and sometimes.
Oh, go ahead.
And sometimes that acts like sort of the proverbial rubber duck that we've talked about, right? Like, I'm going to open up and go through all these things, and I might be listening at the same time that I'm talking and be like, oh, I need to do something differently or something like that. But I don't want you to tell me that. I need to figure it out myself.
Right. Yeah. Experience is still, I think, the best teacher. But I came in and I was our first SharePoint consultant, and
darn right.
SharePoint was a weird duck. There really wasn't anything quite like SharePoint at the time. And not even SharePoint. The SharePoint you're told about and the SharePoint you have are different. But I was always hungry for mentorship from a SharePoint expert that had been there, done that. And I never really had that. And yeah, I think it would have helped me greatly to have somebody to pose questions to. And, I knew the front end really, really well and could do everything I needed to do on the front end. And then people that wrote code and put it on top of SharePoint and used it really as a back end for an application, they didn't know anything about the front end.
Nope.
So it's, you have other people with skill sets that use the same platform, but they don't know what I know, and I don't know what they know. And so there's not much opportunity there for mentoring. But it's something I'd like to see happening more. I don't know if it needs to be official, but
I think if you can make it unofficial, it's, I don't know. I could go both ways on it, right? Like mine are all, well, I've got SDG, we have our pals, right? Which is kind of a tour guide intro into whatever. And you could kind of call it a mentorship, but not really, right? We're peers and we're just kind of, and then other folks have just kind of randomly reached out, and it's nice.
Yeah, when it happens organically, I think. I don't think it's something that works super well when it's necessarily forced, because there's a big relationship aspect.
I think if anything, though, like it would be nice if there was some formal menu of potential. I mean, as a younger guy, I would have struggled to reach out to somebody, at Peter's level right now to say, hey, I really need help. I need a mentor. I need something, right? Maybe it doesn't necessarily need to be formal, but maybe it could be a list of folks that wouldn't mind, like an open, like if you need a mentor, here's a Rolodex of people that have already said they would be delighted to take the awkwardness out of the approach. And yeah.
Right.
I feel like we started that. But
I think we just started something just now.
Yeah. Somebody just had an idea. There we go.
wisdom sharing.
We'll take this offline. Let's put it in the parking lot. Do that. Make a phase
circle
2.
back to it. Should we
I think
circle back?
You need to circle back. Yeah. Put a pin in it if we can.
But we don't have to circle the wagons, thankfully.
Right. All right. And now that the jargoning is complete, let's just say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.